Good morning. Hello, everyone. It's about 8 o'clock on Friday morning, the 25th of August. Good morning. We're in the Passion Translation. We're in a summer devotion in the book of Ezekiel and Daniel that was just recently um, released. And yesterday we went through verses 1 through 14. And today we're going to be starting in verse 15. This is Daniel's second vision. And yesterday we talked about the vision that he had and how it affected him, and all about the horns and Antiochus Epiphanes. It's hard for me to say. And good morning, Gail. And anyway, we're going to be starting today with the angel Gabriel's interpretation of Daniel's vision. So I wanted to just start by telling a little bit about Gabriel. Do you remember that Gabriel was also the angel who came and spoke to Mary about Jesus' birth? And there seems to be a few different takes on what we call archangels. And some people, in the notes here, Brian Simon talks about there being 4 archangels or archangels, however you want to pronounce it, from the Jewish traditions. But I saw elsewhere that the Bible talks of 7 different ones. I haven't looked that up. But I think that Gabriel is basically known as God's messenger. He's the one that God entrusts with important messages. And he also sits at the left hand of God. Michael, the archangel or archangel, sits on the right side of God's hand, and he's known as the dispenser of justice. Now, this is in the Jewish tradition. They also have 2 other archangels they recognize, which is Uriel and Raphael. Uriel is the archangel of prophecy and wisdom, and Raphael is the archangel who's called a healer and protector of travelers. So, I don't know if the other 2 are truly biblical or just traditional with the Jewish people. They might actually exist. They might actually have those assignments, but we do know that there's Michael and Gabriel for sure. Anyway, Gabriel's the guy, the man, the angel guy that God uses to bring the interpretation. While Daniel's still in the vision, he comes to him and speaks to him. And so we're going to start on page 277 with verse 15. While I, Daniel, was pondering the vision I had seen, suddenly there appeared before me one who looked like a man. And then I heard the voice of someone calling out over the waters of the Ulai Canal, Gabriel, help this man understand the meaning of the vision. Okay, Gabriel means Geber, mighty or notable, mighty or noble of God, or mighty God is my mighty man or my hero. Gabriel was God's intimidator, which is one reason angels always have to say, don't be afraid. The reason they're saying don't be afraid, and we'll see here Daniel's response, is because they're fearfully empowered and looking, intimidating, strong, huge, shining, all the things that could make you faint, as what Daniel's going to do here. And let's see, what else do I want to bring out in the bottom of the page here? I think that was it, just about the angels. And okay, so let's turn over to page 278 and continue to read. It says, as the angel Gabriel came closer to where I was standing, I was so terrified that I fell face down to the ground, onto the ground. And then he said to me, Daniel, son of man, you need to understand that your vision refers to the time of the end. Okay, this is so interesting. We're entering into the interpretation of the dream, and there's a few things that I just want to point out. A vision or a dream or a prophetic word can have a now meaning and it can have a future meaning. And this is an example of one of those, because the now meaning for them at the time was antiphon. I can never say this guy's name. Just a moment. Anticus Antiphanes. That was the now word for them. That was the the type of, or the pre-Antichrist, the type of the Antichrist, and that would be the forward word. So the word was for then and for in the end times as well. So some people have a problem with that, but there can be a dual meaning of a word. So he came closer to where I was standing, and I was so terrified that I fell face down to the ground. And he said to me, Daniel, son of man, you need to understand that your vision refers to the time of the end, or the edge, or the fringe. There is an end of time on the earth as we know it. And that's what this is about. And when he spoke to me, I lost consciousness and passed out. But he took hold of me and raised me to my feet. Okay, it says here in the notes, he fell into a trance or a deep sleep. Daniel experienced a complete loss of consciousness before the angel Gabriel. And it's actually an unusual supernatural state of unconsciousness. It's the same root word used of Adam, actually, in the creation story. So when Adam went into a place of unconsciousness or fell into a deep sleep so that God could remove his rib to create Eve, this is the same word that's used. The splendor of Gabriel's presence overwhelmed Daniel, much like what happened to John when he experienced an angelic encounter in Revelation 22:8. Dazed and overpowered in Gabriel's presence, Daniel passed out. Now, we are human beings, and this is a heavenly being. And not only is it a heavenly being, like an angel, he's one of the two mightiest heavenly beings in the universe, and he has a place at the left hand of God. So that means that he's in the presence of God and carries the presence of God with him wherever he goes. That should tell you what it's like for our human bodies to intersect that kind of power. And so that is also why people, when they are in the presence of God with a person that has a gift of healing, for example, very often they fall over under the presence, that power of God. That is what knocks them over, like what's happening here with Daniel. Okay, so all happens in the Bible and should not be something that we think is not correct when it happens now, because it can definitely happen even just in a church meeting or a meeting where there's healing of people's bodies and minds going on. All right, so here's the explanation starting in verse 20. The ram that you saw with two long horns represents the kingdoms of the Medes and the Persians. The male goat represents the kingdoms of Greece, and the bighorn on its forehead is the first king of the Greek Empire. As for the horn that was broken off and replaced by 4 prominent horns, this signifies that 4 other kingdoms will rise from its midst and their combined power will not be as great as the first. When their reign comes to an end and their crimes have reached their full measure, there will arise a stern king skilled in stubbornness and trickery. Now, as we read through this, I'm just going to keep reading. This is describing both Antiphanes and also the Antichrist, which is the Antichrist spirit, I believe, is already in the planet, on the earth. Most likely he's already in the earth. But the Lord has a time sealed for him to rise to power. That goes with his timeline, with God's timeline. All right, so he will grow in might, but not through any power of his own. That's verse 24. So he's going to grow in power and might, but it's not going to be because he has his own power and might. Actually, it's fueled by Satan, allowed by God, fueled by Satan. He will cause amazing devastation, succeed in every undertaking, and destroy mighty ones, the saints of the Most High. By his cunning he will make treachery succeed under his rule. In his own mind he will highly exaggerate his own importance. When they are at ease, he will suddenly destroy many. I thought this was interesting because I don't really feel like the world is at ease right now. And there will come a point when people feel like they can breathe a sigh of relief, and they will be at peace for a point of time, a length of time, and that's when he will strike. So I don't think it's right now, for sure. But when he rises up against the prince of all princes, he will be broken, but not by any human power. Again, this is not with Antiochus, he died of illness suddenly, so he wasn't brought down militarily, and that's what's going to happen with the Antichrist. He will be brought down suddenly, but it won't be through human power. It will be God's design and his plan of how he will do this, but he will be broken. The explanation of the vision you had about the evening and morning sacrifices is absolutely true, and seal up the vision, for it concerns the distant future. I, Daniel, was dazed and lay sick for several days. When I got up and went back to serve the king, I was perplexed by the vision, for it seemed beyond understanding. There's so much just in that one verse I want to say, but the first thing I want to say is that he was dazed and lay sick for several days. This can be, to me, the word here, being dazed, is like being in shock. And being in shock is, I guess that was in another translation. It's not in the notes here, and it's not in this translation. But being in shock is one of the stages of grief. I don't know if you know that. And to me, when I read this, I felt like this was a form or a stage of grief that Daniel was experiencing. He was in the stage of grief where you ask the question, why God, why did this happen? And it's a form of shock, and it's pretty common to go through this stage, and I think that's really what was happening, and it was affecting Daniel's body, and I have been through this. It does affect your body as well. It can really make you sick. Sick in spirit, sick in body. But what I love here, and we all come to this at different times in our experience of grief, is that Daniel did not allow it to keep him from serving the king. So he went back to serve the king. I don't I don't know how many several days is for him. It could have been a month, it could have been a week, I don't know what it was. But he had to experience the humanness of this, is what I'm saying. The power of this word, this prophetic word, this vision, these things that he saw, because he knew it had to do with the end times as well, and because of who the messenger was, Gabriel, just being, in his presence and experiencing the power of that archangel, all of that together, in coming into alignment with a human being, caused him to have to take a pause, and then he was able to pick himself up, or let God pick him up again, and go on to serve the King. And that is what ultimately we come to a decision to do in our grief, is to go on. And so he came out of this, and it says at the end of the chapter, it was, I was perplexed by the vision. It seemed beyond understanding. Another version says no one understood it. Well, there is a reason, and that is because it's not that God would tell us something or tell him something that he didn't want him to understand. There are things that we're told that are still sealed up. That's what the Bible calls it. It's sealed up for a later understanding, a later revelation about what was said. And so he was unable to completely understand the why of God, or how this was going to affect the earth, or how it was going to affect the Jewish people. And so it's not that God doesn't want him to understand it. It's just not for at that appointed time for him to understand all of it, if that makes sense. And that's the way it is with a lot of things. So we can go to God and say many things. We can, when he reveals something, we can say, I don't understand this. I'm in shock over this. I'm grieved over this. I'm not happy about what you're saying. Do you want me to understand this more fully? Is it in your time frame right now for me to get more understanding about this? Do you want me to wait on you? Whatever you say, God, I surrender to you, and I'm going to keep going. But I don't fully understand what you're doing right now. Ultimately, that's what happens with grief. And I feel like that is such a timely or a life message for me, because that's what I've had to actually walk out. And so I think that's what Daniel's doing here. He's making such a good choice. Even though he was sick, he was shocked, he had just fainted, he had just encountered Gabriel, he had just heard things that really were so hard for a human being to hear. And yet he got up and was, again, he gave himself the time that he needed to recover initially, and then he got up. And I just give grace to people who are in the time of lying down, and also grace to what the appropriate time is for you to get up on your feet again. Everyone is different. Everyone's capacity to hold what God has said or done is different. And so grace, 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 and he made the right choice here. Let me see what I've got. If you could see my book here, it's just full of my writing all over. And I want to make sure that I don't skip over things the thoughts that I wrote down. As I said before, Anticus was a preview of the Antichrist. He was like a precursor, a foreshadowing, but it actually really happened. And remember, I told you he killed hundreds of thousands of Jewish people. And again, this is all about two things spoken of at the same time, a now word and a forward word of the end times. And if he is alive in the world today, the Antichrist, he will be recognized by the world, and he will be seen as a winner, somebody who everyone touches, everyone sees him, whatever he touches turns to gold, sort of thing. All right, I want to read something to you about the, the commonality between Antichrist and Antichrist. First of all, I looked up, we know what the word anti means. It means against. The word C-H-U-S, cuss, where did I write that? Means, where did I write this? Okay. Cuss means God is salvation or God rescues. So he was anti the truth of God rescuing and God being our salvation. Antichrist, the word Christ means anointed one. So this future Antichrist is anti or against the anointed one, the anointing of God. Okay, so then I wanted to read to you the similarities between the two. I just have that up on my screen now so I can read it to you. This prophecy in this passage reads equally true of both Antichrist and Antichrist. This is an example of a prophetic passage that has both a near and a far fulfillment. Okay, so then Antiochus Epiphanes was known for his cruel brutality. This will also be true of the Antichrist when he is unleashed. Oh, it's terrible to think about what's going to be happening. And then he understands sinister schemes through his cunning. Antiochus was known for his flattery and smooth tongue, and the coming Antichrist will strike a covenant with Israel. That's going to come up in our next chapter, Daniel 9, verse 27. His power shall be mighty, but it's not his own power. Antiochus Epiphanes was empowered by Satan, but it was allowed by God, and this is going to be true of the coming Antichrist. He will prosper and he will thrive. Antiochus looked like a total success at the time. The coming Antichrist will look like a complete winner until God topples his reign. He will destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Antiochus Epiphanes destroyed his enemies, but he also harshly persecuted the people of God. The coming Antichrist is also going to destroy and persecute. It is said here also that he will cause deceit to prosper. It will. Both of these kingdoms or both of these rulerships are marked by deceit. In 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 9 and 10, it says, "The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth." The love of the truth. My gosh, that's so beautiful. That they might be saved. Okay, so that's a description of what's going to happen with the Antichrist there in 2 Thessalonians. One day we will go through the epistles, and that will be one of them, 2 Thessalonians, Lord willing. Okay, and then he shall exalt himself in his heart. The coins of Antiochus Epiphanes were inscribed with this title, Theos Epiphanes, meaning God manifest. So this is the ultimate of exaltation, where he says that he himself is God. I can't imagine what the people were going through at that time. We think that, we're the only generation that is struggling through difficulties in our culture and in our generation, but it's not true. My gosh, just to think that there was this crazy leader that was so full of power and calling himself God. How many before him had done the same? And, the Lord will only stand for this for a certain amount of time. And we cannot let the wonder or the why get us stuck. We must keep pushing forward into the truth. And I love that verse in 2 Thessalonians. They did not receive the love of the truth. We've got to receive the love of the truth and push forward. That's the word for us today. We've got to receive the the love of the truth and be saved and push forward past, experience the why, but push forward, because we are finite in our minds, people. We do not understand everything. We can't even begin to understand the ways of God and all of the ways that he allows things in the earth. The people that exalt themselves to do this ultimately become unbelievers, become agnostics when they're still undecided, and then they become atheists. And that is because they have tried, dear ones, they have tried in their mind to make sense of the judgments of God, of the workings and dealings of God in the earth, and they have been unsuccessful, and that is where they land. And I'm telling you, stay in the camp of the believers. Stay in the believing camp. Stay where you will be safe, and where you will be saved, even though something does not make sense. And the way that you stay in the camp is through humility. Bow your knee to the one true God, even though you don't understand. Even though Daniel did not understand, he was almost in a crisis here in this vision. And yet he went back to serving the king. And I know that this means literally that he went back to his job post, but it also means figuratively he went on to serve the King of Kings. And that is what we must decide to do. Go on with your jobs. Go on with your parenting. Go on with your marriage. Go on, go on, go on in the humility and the service of the King. That is truly what we have to decide today. And we will have, this is a word for the season that we're entering into, that we will have to make this decision, all of us, to go on and serve the King no matter what the day looks like, no matter what the season is that we're going to be entering into here. The shaking, the chaos. And as the Lord told me, the word for 2023 that he spoke to me was the word messy in the beginning of January, that things were going to get very messy. Okay, I got off there, but that was the word of the Lord. So I'm not really off. Off script, I guess, off from reading what I'm reading. He shall exalt himself in his heart. I told you what the coins had written at the time. He shall even rise against the prince of princes. Antiochus Epiphanes hated the people of God and fought against them, but it was really because he hated God, not just the people of God. The same will be true of the coming Antichrist, who will hate the Jews because he hates God. And then he'll be broken without human means. Antiochus Epiphanes died of disease, not by the hand of man. And in a similar way, no man will defeat the coming Antichrist, but the hand of Jesus himself will strike him down. And that's in Revelation 19:20. And then, therefore seal up the vision. Daniel must do this because in his day the vision referred to a period far distant in its ultimate fulfillment. And for us, the time is actually near. Revelation 1:3. And the book is unsealed now. So the book has been unsealed when John wrote the book of Revelation. That was way after the book of Daniel. And we know now we're in a different era and that things could move quickly, actually. All right, now, so let me get back and see what you guys, I was reading and I couldn't see what you guys were writing here. Okay, yes, very good. All right, so we are, we're basically done with chapter 8. I'm trying to see if there was anything else I wanted to leave us with the encouragement or the admonition to carry with us the admirable spirit when we speak about the end times or we talk about stuff like this, not to talk about it with a wrong spirit. Jesus said that it will be the worst time that planet Earth has ever seen. That's what Jesus said. So all of these other historical moments that we're reading about that were horrific, I mean, in our time, or our memory, the Holocaust, for instance, but back in these biblical times too, horrific things happening. But Jesus said, it will be the worst time the planet has ever seen or ever known. And we want to have the right spirit when we talk to people about this. We want to have a spirit of compassion that overrides everything else. A spirit that wants to rescue people. And we have to learn how to love people in truth. We have to be able to speak the truth in love, but we've got to be gracious. And I just want to caution everyone to not get caught, and myself included, because I can do the same thing, and to not get caught up in the posting of things on people's timelines, or I can get caught up in a Twitter account, for instance, and say something, and the Lord will say, I want you to take that off because of the spirit that's behind it. If you need to just be right, that's not okay. If everything you're typing or saying with your mouth is leading somebody into truth by the grace of God, it's okay, I think. But if it's to jab someone, especially if it's to oppose someone, or to even just weigh in, sometimes Christian commentators will just pose a question to see if you could agree with them. Even in your agreement, even whatever you post, it still needs to be flavored with salt. It needs to be flavored with a place that a person that doesn't know Jesus yet could still land, could still come in and feel welcome, because we're really good at getting our points across and doing it at the cost of a soul. And I'll just end with this. I remember in my 30s, I was in a university that gave degrees for, what am I trying to say? Apologetics, sorry. I couldn't think of the word. And I thought that I was going to get my master's in apologetics. I was really revved up to get all this book learning and understanding. But my heart was to provide a way for people to come into the saving knowledge of Jesus and to know all the trickery, I guess, of the enemy and the different religions and faiths well enough that I would be able to speak about them. Well, that was a long time ago. That was 3 decades ago. And I sat in several classes. I think maybe it was in Anaheim. I lived in San Diego. I was commuting, and I think I went through like 3 courses. The teachers were brilliant, and they were so good at what they were telling us. But I couldn't stay, and I didn't end up getting the degree because my heart was broken. I was one of the only women in the classes. There were a few of us, but I couldn't stand the argumentative spirit in the place, and maybe it was just that place, I don't know, but people were exalting what they knew in their head to be true and to be right, and it was grieving me, so I couldn't do it. So I didn't do it. But the heart is still there, and I'm thankful today to be able to lead people into truth with a right spirit, hopefully. Okay, so I hope that you have a great day today, Friday. Oh, Pepper, you are so wound up. I think she's hungry. She's mad at me because I didn't feed her yet. I usually feed her before, and so she's making so much noise. Sorry about that. But I'm coming. Just a minute. Um, yeah, so I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll be in chapter 9 of Daniel. Thank you for coming on. I hope you have a blessed day. Okay, bye-bye.